Hello and welcome to another video as part of the series Raising Positive People with me, Olivia Edwards, the Positive Parenting Coach. So today we're going to be talking about something that comes up all the time because there are so many different approaches to parenting, and that is the difference between discipline and punishment and what we mean by those things. So traditionally, models of parenting and approaches and styles of parenting have followed a more control-based route. And that's where the adult believes they're in control, they're the boss, what they say goes, that whole children should be seen and not heard, and that I am going to raise compliant, obedient children. That's kind of the baseline for the model. Now, the problem that we know now, with all the research that we've done over the last 30 to 50 years, is that when you have a control-based model of parenting, your child is at some point likely to get to a stage where you realize actually you can't control them, whether that's physically, emotionally, whatever method you've been using. They might not get to that stage, and they might allow you to continue to control them, but that's not a healthy relationship in terms of growing up and for them having that as their blueprint of relationships either. So that's a whole nother topic. But what can happen as children get old enough to realize they're their own person, they have their own thoughts and feelings and body, and if you've been using a control-based model of parenting, then they start to fight back. And that's where you can find yourself in power struggles. And typically they would happen at meal times, bedtimes, transitional times, when you're trying to leave the house or get them in the car seat or the buggy, because that's when they're using their body. Essentially, they feel that they need to grab onto control. I'm going to control what happens to me. I'm going to control what I put in my body, what I do with my body. And you get these big blow-ups and power struggles. Now, a punishment model of parenting, where it's based around that control, would include anything that you would use as a tool in your parenting that results in either fear, pain, shame, or blame for your child. Now, for some people, that sounds really serious, really extreme, but there are parenting strategies that would fall under those that we maybe don't realize. So until you can unpick the strategy and look at the reasons behind that and why it works, which I'll talk about, you maybe don't realizing that you're falling into those traps. So for example, we all know that physical punishment, smacking and hitting, would fall into that punishment model because it's inflicting pain and potentially other things as well, shame and guilt on a child. We know that, even though it's legal in England, it's illegal in Scotland and Wales, and hopefully England will follow suit soon. We all know, really, that's not an effective strategy. And if you're watching this, you're probably of that alignment. There are other things that would fall under that punishment model, like bribery. So when you're trying to bribe your child to leave the playground or leave the house, for example, or get them to do something, and you're saying to them, oh, just do that and you can have this snack, or do that and you can watch what you want when we get home. They're obviously bribery, and that would actually fall under a punishment model because you're not teaching the child anything, which again I'll come on to in a minute. Threats would also fall under the punishment model. So, if you don't eat your peas, you don't get pudding. If you don't come here right now, we're not going to so-and-so's house. Making threats like that, you're inflicting fear on your child. They're fearful of the result of that, of the outcome. We've all been there. They tend to get used when we feel lost as a parent. We don't know what else to do. So we're drawing on things that perhaps we've experienced in our childhood or we've seen other people do. And again, that's a whole other topic, but we just claw to them and cling to them and start using them. And maybe afterwards, actually, if you want to align to a more positive, gentle, respectful parenting approach, you could actually feel quite guilty or quite bad yourself about doing those things. So the opposite of that for me is a discipline approach. There can be confusion around this because people feel discipline and punishment are the same thing, but they are absolutely not. Discipline is all about teaching. So it comes from the word disciple. It's all about teaching children and coaching them. And really it's thinking about, is what I'm going to do, is my response and my reaction helping my child to learn? Or am I doing it because I want them to feel bad, essentially, which would fall under a punishment model? So discipline is all about the teaching element. Now, that's not to say that you don't have boundaries and that you just say yes to everything and become permissive. Not at all. Discipline definitely uses boundaries, but those boundaries are set really lovingly, with safety in mind, with empathy, and they're there to help protect children and to enable them to feel really safe, seen, soothed, and secure. But within that boundary and that safe limit, you're going to give them an element of control, of power, of responsibility, so it feels collaborative. They feel involved and there's going to be learning taking place. So, classic examples would be if your child responds in a way to something happening, whether that's something they want and they can't have it, or you say no to them, because no can be a big trigger, and they have this huge response, shouting, screaming, kicking, crying, big emotions coming out. Some people would respond to that from a punishment model, go to your room, you're going on timeout, you just hit me. They would respond with their emotions because they've maybe not learned the skills to regulate themselves in that moment. All of those things would send a message to your child, I can't handle your emotion right now. So they might then suppress it, or they might feed into a guilt and shame cycle around that. Sending them to a timeout or to their room is telling them, I don't want to be with you in this moment. And actually, when they get older and we expect our teenagers or young adults to come to us when they have problems or challenges, and they don't, that's because when they come to us with their problems as a younger child, like this emotional outburst, we send them away. So we don't want to be starting off with that kind of framework and that blueprint. An alternative to that would be the same scenario, but instead of you responding from your emotions, you learn how to remain calm. And I know that takes a lot of practice, and you can learn that from other things involved in this membership. And you respond empathetically with love. You help them to regulate. You recognize their emotion, you validate it. So they grow up knowing actually there is no problem with that emotion. It's actually really healthy that they're getting the emotion out. What we need to support them with is ways of doing that that's appropriate, where they're going to be safe, other people are going to be safe. So we allow them to go through that. What we need to recognize from a discipline and learning point of view is that no learning can take place in that moment. So you want to have connection before correction, because when they're in that huge emotional blow up moment and they're in that fight, flight, freeze response, they're in their survival brain, as I call it, their primitive brain, some other people call it. They're not thinking, because the learning brain, their intelligent brain, is not online. So you can't deliver the lesson to them then. What you need to do is wait until they've calmed down, and then you either bring it up, maybe with older children, look at a solution together, involve them, have that collaboration. I know you were really angry then, and that's absolutely okay to be angry. It's not okay to throw things or to kick people. That's hurtful. So you're giving a clear boundary and a message, and then you can work on the solution. For a younger child, they might not feel ready to work on that solution yet. They might still not be regulating. They might need time. You can use play as a form of working on that. So when you're with them on their level, playing with them, role model with them, really show them the behaviors you want. Use tools and resources around emotions and feelings, books, TV shows, songs, activities. I have loads of ideas around this that I share with parents when I work one-to-one with them on my programs. You can use those kind of strategies and tools to really support them. So they're the main differences really between discipline and punishment. If you find yourself falling into the punishment model and you want to step away from that, there's a lot that can be done in terms of rewriting your blueprint for parenting. Sometimes we really want to be the positive, gentle parent and using discipline. And what ends up happening is our needs perhaps haven't been met. We're exhausted, we're overwhelmed, we're tired, we're hungry. So we resort back to a default mode of parenting, perhaps they're from our childhood and the narratives around parenting for us, and we start shouting and yelling and using those threats and bribery. A lot of the work I do, especially in my program, is I help support you to step outside of that and really understand that, but have compassion for yourself. Don't feel guilty in those moments. And then the final thing to add as well is that consequences can fall under a discipline model and not a punishment model if they're used properly and effectively, and they're about supporting the teaching and learning of the child and not making the child feel bad and punishing them for something they've done. So that's something else to consider, and something I'm sure I will be delivering to you guys at a later date. So I hope you found that really useful and that you go on to tune into some more videos.